$1,000 checks are ready to be sent to everybody, and it's the good news that Joe Biden is bringing to us. It's a one-time bonus relief check that many of you guys will qualify for. The Federal Reserve announced that they are expecting a mild recession to occur this year, and the lawmakers are now planning the next steps that are needed to bring down inflation. But according to the minutes of a recent meeting, the Federal Reserve economists still expect a mild recession. So with the recession coming to town, it just means one thing: stimulus checks should be sent out. As a result, all 11 voting members of the Federal Open Market Committee were in favor of lifting the Fed's benchmark lending rate by 25 basis points, between 5 to 5.25%, although there was a disagreement about what to do next. And folks of participants noted that if the economy evolved along the lines of the current outlooks, then further policy firming after this meeting may not be necessary. Now, what does this all mean for a fourth stimulus check? Well, with a recession coming, it means that stimulus payments have to be sent out. Because the labor market remains on strong footing, employers added 253,000 jobs in April, and average hourly earnings rose by about 0.5% that month. And jobless claims remain relatively low, though they have trended upward in recent weeks. And with inflation running high this past year, many people still have felt the squeeze. The cost of things continue to go up, but income has stayed the same for most of the time. This struggle has forced millions to cut back in the hope of making ends meet. And due to the crisis, many budgets are running at a surplus. These surpluses are partially due to shutdowns, and during the height of the crisis, the money the federal government gave to states caused this issue. And because states have no more than income than expenses, they decided to help out the residents by giving them money in the form of tax rebates. With these tax rebates, it'll help you out with higher fuel prices, food prices, and other costs, but it's simply not enough. Now, people in New Mexico have a New Mexico personal income tax return. And we're not declared as dependent. Well, good news for you. You can claim up to $1,000. Because according to the governor's office, that is, the deadline to file the income tax return for the payments is worth $500 to $1,000. Now, this is important as prices for basic necessities continue to be high across the nation. Residents who have already filed their tax returns will receive the payments automatically when they are dispersed in mid-June. There is no separate application for the rebates, but the rebates are separate from the tax refunds. However, those who receive the refunds for their 2021 returns by direct deposit will receive the rebate through direct deposit as well. Residents will also need to apply for the relief funds when applications open because the relief payments will be released on a first come, first served basis. And Georgia taxpayers have also begun receiving refunds in the second year in a row. House Bill 162 uses part of Georgia's revenue surplus of more than $6 billion to pay for a refund of state income taxes for 2021. The single filers and married taxpayers who file separately will receive refunds of up to $250. Head of household filers will get a maximum refund of $375, while married taxpayers filing jointly will receive up to $500. Taxpayers who are claimed as dependent and had a tax liability are also eligible for the Great Refund. Not just in New Mexico though, because in Hawaii, rebates are also for single filers. Well, that's $300 if you're earning less than $100,000. Folks, I do believe it is a good thing for Joe Biden to send out the fourth stimulus check, but he needs to do more for the American people.
Representative John Lewis led the way on that as well. This was about customer service and reform at the IRS. Were there benefits from that? COVID got in the way. I think that does actually beg the question of what have been the impacts of COVID on customer service at the IRS. Mr. Speaker, I'm concerned that when there are resources afforded the IRS, they're just not used the way they can and should be, especially as it relates to customer service and the honest taxpayers that my colleague from Massachusetts references. That we want to do everything we can for when the American people are doing the right thing for the right reasons and abiding by the law, and yet they would still be exposed to having to prove themselves again after they already did with voluntary tax compliance. But here comes an audit, and I vividly recall the fact that in the 90s, IRS as an agency overstepped. In fact, I believe it was President Clinton that even pulled back the IRS somewhat because they were going after law-abiding, tax-paying Americans who already did everything they were supposed to do. So that certainly establishes my concern about why we would take legislation, why we would see legislation passed last year that would pretty randomly put forward funding that I think will ultimately get in the way of these tax-paying Americans who, like I said, already did.
And the principles that have been the cornerstone of peace, prosperity, and stability on this planet for more than 75 years were at risk of being shattered. 1 year ago, the report, Kyiv stands strong. Kyiv stands proud. It stands tall. And most important, it stands free.
Now, the U.S. is in full tax season. They're in full swing this year. It kicked off January 23rd, everybody. Not only that, but the IRS will be receiving and processing tax returns from companies and individual taxpayers for the fiscal year of 2022. So that means people can get stimulus pretty fast. If you don't ask me, well, here's the reason why. At the very least, the Earned Income Tax Credit reduces the amount of tax owed. At best, the low-income people who have little or no income tax liability can receive the total credit in the form of a tax refund. But many states are also sending and creating new tax credits to provide extra inflation relief to their residents. The Connecticut governor has recently held a news conference to announce a new budget proposal that he will present to the General Assembly this month. This proposal will include a plan to increase Connecticut's Earned Income Tax Credit from the current rate of 30% to the federal rate of 40%. Increasing the rate will provide an additional $45 million in state tax credits to approximately 200,000 qualifying low-income people. Above the amount they are currently receiving under the program, people can get a lot more. Families will generally receive 95% of all the earned income that the tax credit dollars creates. And this is just one of the several tax relief measures that Governor Lamont will include in his upcoming budget proposal. Early this month, he announced it will include a plan to restore the pass-through entity tax credit to its original level, enabling small business owners to save money by claiming a credit that's even larger than the returns. The governor plans to announce additional tax relief measures, including those targeted towards the middle, lower class workers in the coming days, everybody. And key economic indicators such as retail sales and historic job gains are painting the picture of a robust economy that shows few signs of slowing down. But smaller than expected drop in January inflation has some economists worried that the Fed is going to prolong its interest rate hikes, which could tip the economy into recession that pulls millions of people out of work. That's not good, folks, because the CPI, a key gauge of inflation, has fallen for several months in a row, dropping to 6% annually in January, and markets had been expecting the CPI to land at around 6%, cueing a chorus of economic